the universe is testing you to see. Welcome back, investor, to another episode of the Passive Income Adventures. My partner, business partner, Lais Kees, here to share her passive income adventure. Fascinating story. I think, Lais, when did I first meet you? Like 2021.
I
First time
think
we
you're
met?
or 2020, one of the two.
I remember it was in this house. I remember you came over when we had not even moved into this house yet. And you had found me on social and you were wanting to, you basically asked me for a mentor at that point.
Mhm.
And so we talked for a while and we did a couple of small kind of social media projects together. And then I started getting to know you better in my real estate investing club. And then we decided to partner up as I learned more about you, your background, your work ethic, and how you have a skill set that complements mine. It was like, we can mix the magic here. So I introduce you onto the show. For our regular listeners, you'll know we do this in a past, present, future format. So talking about the past, where they came from, what were the decision points that they went into. Present is what the guest is working on right now. It's really where they can get nerdy in all the details, get all the weeds. And then we talk about the future, the dreams, the passive income adventures that you want to go on, and what keeps you getting out of bed in the morning when you get out of rat race 1.0. How do you avoid getting into rat race 2.0? This kind of stuff. And so I've heard your story before. So I'm really actually looking forward to hearing it again, just from you talking to our listener. If this is your first time here, we basically encourage you to take more passive income adventures, and we introduce you to guests and stories that teach you not only how to find time to do it, but also how to pay for it financially through investing, like truly passive income, not like a hands-off business or any of the other passive income scams that are out there, and introducing you to people like ladies who are walking the talk and getting it done truly passively while they're also able to run a business that they're passionate about. So thank you for coming, ladies, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So take us back in time to just give us like your Wonder Woman origin story and tell us about you.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me. This is actually the first time I'm able to schedule time because guess what? I just left corporate America, right? So
Woohoo!
I had a strict schedule in a sense and couldn't really join Emma. And I'm just excited. This is one of the victories of being able to leave and just really choose what I do with my time.
That's
This is
awesome.
definitely the why everything, right? Why all the work that led me into this moment. But you talking about origins, I'm definitely not from the US. I was born and raised in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is where I grew up. And just, it is a third world country. We do have a lot that we follow the US's footsteps. But all in all, it was a great experience for me to grew up there and actually move to the US. When I moved to the US, I was around 21. Now I'm 34 and I just really wanted to study abroad. I actually did an exchange program in New York City and I really enjoyed the people. I had visited Europe before and I didn't feel super welcome there. And so when I lived in the US, I just really felt welcomed here, really great people. And I was like, I could go to school in this place. I actually, at the time, went to school for kinesiology. So, a completely different area that I went to school in the US. And I just wanted to do something in regards to business. So, my degree here in the US is in business finance. And I think I'm a couple classes away from a degree, a double major in economics. I actually went to school to do taxes. I wanted to become a certified tax accountant and, become a CPA. And then I decided that I liked the social aspect of life a lot. So I really wanted to do something else. And so finance seemed like the right thing to do at the time. But that's, that's my journey from Brazil into the US. I ended up finding my husband here, 120% American beef, like he says.
America.
Yeah. And so I don't think he would ever move away from the US. And I try to convince him to live abroad here and there because we could have probably both retired and just live off of passive income full time if we would live abroad. But
Mhm.
that's a different conversation, I think,
Yeah.
for that.
I had
But
this argument with my husband. I'll tell you how I finally brought him around. But anyway, we'll get into that in the future life section.
You'll have to teach me because, yeah, I would like, even if it's just for a year, to just being out of corporate America for about a month now, I already feel better. Like I can think more clearly about what I want to do.
Mhm.
And I think that people here are overworked and it's just having some free time to think, to read, to really experience. I think it's a big deal. So, anyways, that's a little bit of my beginnings, and then I jumped into corporate America and stayed with the same company for a few years where I was consulting businesses, had different jobs right out of college in marketing, and then got a job in business consultant as a business consultant as well as an acquisitions manager for my territory. And I worked a lot directly with CPAs and bankers, just bringing them information on the workforce. So it was quite interesting work sitting with different CEOs and getting to hear some of the things that were going wrong and getting to give them some advice based off of some of the data that we had and also some of the experiences that I was seeing with some other clients and being able to guide them into different avenues that would support their business and help them with whatever goal they had at the time. So it was a quite interesting job. At the same time, I started when I first married my husband. He had a house he wanted to get rid of and he couldn't sell it for the life of him. And he was like, I need your help. And I was like, okay, but we need to do it my way because I don't think you're doing the right way with just throwing on the wall and hoping it's going to stick. You actually have to think this through and add some value to the house. And so we went and we added some value to the house. The market we were in was also a difficult market. Houses would sit on the market for years. Like,
Mhm.
I think one of the houses was sitting for almost 4 years, which was crazy. It was in the middle of a forest. It was a beautiful place, but people didn't really wanna buy it unless they were about to retire, really, because it was a 20-minute drive to the city, no grocery stores. It was just not a great place to live if you wanted to be busy. We decided to add value to the house, and our house hit the market. And the first day it got under contract.
Wow.
So that was a sign to me that I should look more into investing in real estate. And that's when I started being intentional with investing in real estate. I've always been intentional about saving and investing on the market, but started investing in real estate and doing live in flips where we would live on the house and then flip or live on the house and then rent and move out. So that's where I started my real estate journey. I don't even know when that was, maybe 2016
Okay.
when I really started that journey. And then in 2020, when everything shut down and we went home, right, working from home, I decided I wanted to invest out of state and just start acquiring that way. Because at that point, we already had a house out of state that we were managing, that I was managing really. And so I decided to intentionally purchase properties out of state. And that's what I started doing as well. And then I acquired commercial property by myself, which was not, now that I've lived through it, it was a great learning experience. But doing by yourself, it turns into a full-time job. It became a full-time job of its own. And then I had a couple other houses that were out of state as well. So it all became like a second full-time job to me. I already had a full-time job in corporate America, very competitive, very cutthroat environment. And I had my kids and my house to take care of. So it was just a lot. It was very stressful at the time. I used to have panic attacks, sometimes anxiety attacks to go to sleep. So that I don't know that I recommend. If people have a steady job that they're happy with, I would not recommend them to just start acquiring and being active investors because there's a lot of gurus out there saying, oh, yeah, it's all rainbows and butterflies. It's super easy. It's passive income. It's not passive income,
Mhm.
right? You know how that is.
Yeah. And, I think that one of the interesting things that you're telling about your story here is this juxtaposition of intentionality, which you have always struck me as a very intentional person, but also this kind of I fell into it because your husband had this house
Mhm.
and things like that. So a lot of us fell into it, but when we realize the power of investing, whether it's real estate investing or some other vehicle that works for people that they can really get excited about, dig into, learn, and become at least enough of an expert at to invest passively, if not more actively running the business behind the investment. We fall into it a little bit, but then you took your intentionality and your propensity to just sit back and analyze and think about things like, what do I really want? Because I remember when I first met you, I didn't catch it in your accent that you didn't grow up in the United States. So even the way that you learned English, I think is an example because I said, "Oh," when you mentioned that you grew up in Brazil, I'm like, "Oh, when did you move here?" And you said it was when you were an adult. And I said, "Wait a second, how did you learn to speak English so much without an accent that I could barely hear it and only when I'm looking for it?" And you said, I just paid attention to what other people were saying and tried to copy what they were doing. And yeah, thanks. Oh, if there was a lesson in how to be an investor or how to get what you want out of life, that analogy could be expanded to everything you do. And so that spirit of intentionality and what you're doing really is what struck me. And at that same meeting, you also made another comment. I invest out of state because this was getting to be too time consuming, like a part-time job. And when I invest out of state, it forced me to rely on delegating and hiring a property manager. But I know now the end of that story that even that got to the point where this is too much work. So take me
Mhm.
through that process when you first started investing out of state. And for a while, it was like this weight lifted off your shoulders and then bring us back full circle to when you were like, okay, never mind. That's actually a lot of work too.
Also fell on my lap because we bought this house in Houston that was a disaster. Oh my gosh, just the thought of it. We call it the haunted house because, in my opinion, it was haunted. But it was like I just had a baby, so I had a newborn, and I had a small child. I had a 1 year old and a newborn.
Hmm.
And we just moved into this house, had mice infestation. I didn't know that. Mice infestation, roaches infestation. We had to redo pretty much the whole house. And it was difficult. And then at the same time, I also got sick with, and I don't think it was related to the house. I think it was prior because we had just moved from California to Texas. My husband had a job. He's a welder. So he had a job that he had to work 80 hours a week. He only had 2 days off in a month. So it was like a almost single parent, and he worked at night. So he would sleep all day. It was almost like a single parent household for a minute there. And I was having to, I enjoy doing the project management. I really enjoy doing that, but it was a lot. And then at the same time, I was sick with what I call mystery illness, but
Yeah.
some type of mold intoxication and mono and Lyme disease. And it was just crazy. So by the time I found out what I had, which was about 2 years in, my husband was invited to go work at a job in Colorado, and he really wanted to go. And I went to go get treatment in Utah. And when I was healed and he was in Colorado, I was like, I'm through with this house. The house was done. It was in one of the best neighborhoods in South Houston because it was like where NASA's at. So lots of engineers, lots of great schools and whatnot. And we were done with that house. The house looked beautiful, and the neighbors were happy even with the way the house looked. And they were super supportive of us because they knew how it was before and it was hurting the neighborhood, the street that we lived in. And I was just done with that chapter. And I was like, let's rent this house and venture with you because I was sick at the time. So I couldn't work for about 2 years. And then we moved to Colorado to be with my husband. And so I automatically became an out of state investor because
Hmm.
of that. And then I started reading some books on it and trying to get the right property manager. Our house rented within a week. We already had a very strong tenant in it because it was a great location. So it was an accident as well. It fell on my lap. And I just always try to think things through and be intentional about how I'm tackling a project. And that experience taught me to just feel comfortable and secure to buy out of state. And so that's when I decided to, oh, okay, I do this and one property is not so bad. But then I had a multi unit and a couple more houses. So I had, I think, three houses and then eight. And it was just difficult. The houses, it was okay to project manage out of state. I also had a project manager that's super important in my opinion. And they were not related to my contractor in any way. So it was like a bad cop, good cop type of situation there. But then with the Plex, it was hard because the property manager I hired, they had all the right answers when I was interviewing them. I wasn't there to see it. And I didn't have an agent I trusted to oversee them. So it's always important to do any project out of state with a project manager, or if you go there and you spend some time till the property is stabilized. So it was just really difficult. All in all, that property was difficult. It was in a bad neighborhood. It was just, yeah, I definitely learned a lot from it, but it just felt like a full time job. And I was like, I need to do commercial real estate, but if I'm doing a more active role, it needs to be with a team of people that are doing different things so we can all complement and help each other.
Mhm.
And when I started connecting more and joining your club, Emma, and getting to participate in the conversation and just even deals. And I was like, this is much easier, right? And let alone for people that are actually just investing passively. So I started also investing in debt investing or just lending capital for projects. And because I have experience with actually getting my hands dirty and doing the work and all of that, I felt good about it as well
Mhm.
because I knew that if that project would, let's say the borrower wouldn't make a payment and then we would have to foreclose on that deal, I'd feel comfortable with my experience and with the team's experience to take that property back and have multiple exit strategies with that property and that project. But then I didn't have all of the stress that I had with having to manage a project manager and a property manager and a contractor and then tenants and something exploded. I think one of my contractors, they installed an HVAC unit like sideways. And so I had to pay for another unit because they installed it wrong. So it's just things like that you don't, if you're not there to see, but sometimes even when you are, like I was having a meeting this morning with a girlfriend who she has, I think, five properties. Every single day, there are things that need to be done. She was telling me about a toilet that got backed out yesterday. I'm not going to get into details because it was a little graphic, but she was like, that took me a couple of years out of my life. And I'm
Yep.
like, told you need to have, a property manager. But even then, it would have been a headache story for her. So if you are on the location, it's still stressful. If you are away, you need to have systems in place and people in place you trust, but it's also stressful. So it was a lot for me as a top producer at my career, mom, wife, having to take care of my home, things like that. It was just a lot to take on. So I decided to just get rid of some of those properties and focus more on larger projects that I could do with a team.
It does make a big difference because your skill set is different than my skill set. I think we both have a lot of construction management experience and a good design sense for property. So in that sense, there's a lot of overlap. But where I really fall down is the finance side. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't know how much you love it, but
A lot of
I
investors
agree.
don't. That's fine.
Your willingness to be able to sit down and do that more nitty gritty work is definitely different than mine. You like operations better than I do. And you're also uh, teaching me more about sales. I'm more of a marketer and at a top level framework kind of person. And I see that in you. But at the same time, you have just a better ability to just get the work done, look down and focus on the details. So tell us a little bit about the
You're
job that you just left, though, because
yeah.
that was a very detail oriented job, top performer. And when we're talking about finance, it makes you sound like a spreadsheet geek, but your job, you basically were a top performing salesperson for Fortune 250, I think. Yeah. And so people are like, oh, maybe they didn't know that about you before. And I didn't even know that about you for quite a long time after I met you, that you are a killer salesperson because you're so good at it that we don't even know what's going on. Not to say that there's anything underhanded, but you're just one of those salespeople who just listens to people and hooks them up with solutions to their problems, whether you can fix it or not. And so it's actually been really interesting for me to watch. So tell us a little bit about that job, why you loved it, what you learned from it, how it's helping, and why you left.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So the reason why I really liked it was sitting with CEOs, listening to their problems and trying to find a solution. And sometimes I didn't have anything I could sell them, but because I had a network, I would just connect them or I would just tell them, hey, there's nothing I can do for you, but this is what I think you should do. And you should speak to this person or this person. I can refer you to a couple people. So that was really like the problem solving side of the job was really interesting to me. I'm an only child, so I can definitely work by myself. I prefer that, especially when I had bosses that understood. For me, it's I never worked a job. Actually, that's a lie. In Brazil, I was in kinesiology, so it paid pennies. I made less than $1 an hour on my internship. And my family was excited for me. And I was like, are you kidding me? Is this the future you want for me? Because I don't see myself adding so much value to people's lives. And I'm not getting compensated for the amount of work I put in every day. So I always try to put in the work and it just didn't work for me. So when I moved to the US and I was able to get a job, it was in sales. And I found out I was good at it because I would just listen to people and I would try to figure it out what was the best solution for them. And if I don't have the best solution for them, sales is a very gray area. It can be where people can turn people into doing something that it's not necessarily the best for them. And for me, that's a really high um, ethical thing to do is to really just 100% honesty. If I can help them, I can help them. And that's okay. And so I've always tried to work that way and do what was really best for that person that was sitting with me. So that was a nice part of the job for me, just really connecting with people one on one and being able to work on my own time. The best bosses I had, they would see that I was giving my best and I was being active and I was doing the job because they knew I wanted to make the money. Right. And my numbers were showing always. So they didn't care what I was doing. They wouldn't micromanage me. And I work much better that way. And then I'm very quick at asking if I don't know something, but I know someone who knows. I just go
Yeah.
there. I don't waste time trying to figure it out. I just call that person. I just ask them how to do it. And then I get it done. For me, that was the nice part of the job. Now, first of all, I need to be working at something that picks up like my brain, that makes me want to continue to progress. And at one point, my job wasn't really that exciting because I wasn't being challenged enough. I
Mm.
like to be challenged. And so that was like a point for me. But then the biggest point that made me want to leave was when they pulled my boss out of our market and they introduced this other person that, oh my gosh, just the thought of it, like they came from the industry, but from outside of the company. And I work for Fortune 100 company. They're actually the largest of their kind, and they're the number one in the world of their kind. So they have a lot of processes in place, systems that work. And this person, they just, first of all, they were bothered that I had a side business, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. All of my bosses before were excited I did because they knew if I had something else that I would pour my capital in, I would be motivated to work and to sell more, right?
Yeah.
Um, and be diligent with my work. So this person, they were not excited. They're like, you should be fired. I'm like, fire me, go for it.
I got rental houses. I don't need this job.
No, like, fire me because then I'm thinking about all of the money they would owe me. And I'm like, cool, I can probably invest that in a couple deals. Anyways, and he was just, I don't think he liked women that had a brain or a mouth or that would not feel threatened by men. And that's me. It's very much a Brazilian thing also.
Yeah.
And he would talk down on me and he would just sabotage. He sabotaged my brand. He sabotaged my career for a long time. For the time he was there, he
Mhm.
sabotaged. When he talked down on me the first time, I just put a boundary and I was like, don't do that. But then he encouraged me when other people would do things that were not acceptable or within company policy.
Mhm.
He encouraged me to talk to HR, which is not what a manager should do. Listen, if you have a job today and your boss tells you to talk to HR, don't do it. That's not the way to go. The way to go is they should talk to HR or they should resolve whatever problem
Mhm.
isn't here. That's the proper way to have it handled. I just never had a bad boss before because I tend to not accept certain things and I know it's just not going to work if I'm not happy in the position or happy doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I have someone micromanaging or talking down or certain things that are not acceptable to me, I didn't put up with it. I've always been very upfront with him about it. But the moment he was hired and the first time he talked down on me, I was like, this is it. Let me look at my numbers. Let me look at what I'm doing. And I was like, I need to plan so I can leave.
Mhm.
And I just want to do what I want to do, which is work on our fund and look at different projects and analyze different projects and help people because the job I have right now in our business, it's very similar to the job I had before, but the difference is it was B2B, right? Business to business.
Mhm.
No, it's more of a client that I am connecting with and I get to hear what are their goals for their life. So
Mm.
that to me is really interesting and exciting. And again, same thing. If we can help them, then I'm happy to refer them to someone or something. Maybe what they need, what they want is to become an active investor. I can refer them to some trustworthy, people like Emma and Emma's Club, where they can learn how they can be active investors, right? Or I can refer them to maybe a CPA or an advisor, whatever it is that they need. Um,
Mhm.
or if we do have a strategy that could potentially help them, that I can share it with them. So it's very similar on the problem solving aspect of things, but it's more enjoyable because I don't have to be talked down on and whatnot. So that was the straw for me. The moment that happened, I was like, I'm already planning my days. I'm counting the days here and I'm going to leave. So that's what broke the camel's back.
Where you had a new boss come in that you enjoyed working for. And so, yet at that point, you were like, I'm already committed to leaving. I have plans. How did that
Yes.
come about?
I love that you brought that up because so I was going to leave last June and then
Mhm.
I made something that we call President's Club. And my boss at the time was like, you're not going to make it. I'm sure he was really excited. I was not going to make it, but something in me, I was like, I'm going to make it just to throw it on this guy's face. But I made it, I think, the last day I could qualify. And I was like, but I don't even care. I made it. Now I'm going to leave because I cannot work for this person anymore. But then when I decided to leave, my previous boss, the one that was taken away from me, he was hired to be boss of everyone. So he
Mm.
was hired to be my boss's boss.
Okay.
And so with that, I was really excited because I was like, great. My former boss was hired to be my boss's boss. And my former boss knew all of the crap that my boss was pulling. So I'm like, great. This guy's not going to be able to pull this crap anymore with not only me, several other people. He really had an issue with women because the other woman on my team, he would do the same thing. I took a huge pay cut after he was hired, to be my boss. So that to me is you're messing with my family. So anyway, so then, but corporate America, things don't move quick, things move slow. And I thought this guy was going to be pushed out way earlier than he was. And so in March of this year, I was like, okay, I'm done. This guy isn't being pushed out. I'm gonna leave. And he quit, I think on the same week I was going to.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I'm gonna stay and try to finish my year because then I don't have to leave any of my pending work for other people to deal with. At least I'm going to try to finish strong. And at that point, I was like, now my boss became my former boss, the one I loved. And he is just I'm just very grateful I had the opportunity to work for him. And he's just an ally. He is just a coach. He wants the best for everyone he works with. He's supportive and he's just very consistent. So if you work for this guy, you want to work for him and you want to do your best because he does his best and he shows you how to do your best. And so it was a great experience for me to work for him. And when he got back to become my boss, I was like, wow, what type of message am I getting right now? Am I supposed to stay? And then a good friend of mine who is in a similar position that I am, she's in accountability because she's in the same type of role.
mhm.
She made the same type of money. She understood all of my pain points and I understood hers. And she wanted to leave corporate. I wanted to leave corporate too, to do real estate. She's a real estate investor. And I told her, I was like, wow, what does this mean? And she's, I think the universe is testing you to see what is it that you really want to do. Because you said that you wanted to leave so you can focus on your business and your family and your health. And with having a full time job and having a business and a family, I couldn't really focus on my health at all because I was working before work and I was working after work and on the weekends, sometimes on my business and sometimes on my job as well. So I was like, wow, that's great thinking. And so I was like, I just need to stick with my plan. This is truly the end of a cycle. I think if I would want to go back, I would be welcomed. But this is the end of a cycle. And I think I just want to move on at this
Yeah,
point and
yeah,
continue with business. That's the main goal. But yeah, that did happen. And that really shook my world a little bit.
yeah. We went through a similar experience the year before when Chris and I first got together to start Raise Capital. We went on a retreat, spent a weekend, and basically planning my husband's exit, his retirement from corporate. And that was over the weekend. And we had chosen a date that he was going to quit about maybe 6 or 8 weeks down the road. And we thought back Monday, Tuesday, he goes in, everything's fine. Wednesday morning, he calls me up. He's, hey, I just went into a meeting with my manager and HR was there. So we all know what that means. And I was like, woo, because one, he got severance.
Yes.
Two, he qualified for unemployment, which you don't get when you quit. And three, it allowed him to have that freedom to be like, do I want to look for another job? So with the unemployment, he had to look for other jobs, seeing what was out there, really weighed his option because the other thing that was a huge benefit to it is we would have chickened out and you didn't chicken out. And that's really what got me about the way that you did it is because I didn't feel like we were financially ready. Like we were taking a big step and it was very scary when he left
Right.
corporate. And I wonder if we had been a couple months into it, that we would have just chickened out because it just was too tight. And somehow we had a year's worth of income saved up. Like we had passive income, we had all this stuff, but it's still too tight. But because he was forced out, he wasn't able to chicken out. Whereas you had that moment where you really had to dig deep and be like, what do I want? It started out similarly,
Mhm.
ended up very differently. And I remember thinking, just because you look at life through your own lens, like, she's not going to quit. She's not going to leave. And then you did. And I was like,
Yeah.
how's she going to keep the lights on? So let's talk about that a little bit because I share a little bit online about how some days are really ugly and really scary, and because we get paid and then we don't get paid for a really long time. And so
Right.
just smoothing that out and keeping the lights on, figuring out how we're going to just keep this thing going has been very stressful this last year. And people think it's all, hey, we went to Hawaii and we
You
did all
know,
this stuff.
yeah.
But that's just not the truth. So you're just embarking on this. Tell me about the practical day to day aspect And maybe because your husband has a job that helps to smooth things out. I don't know. You
Yeah,
tell me, because this is a huge concern for people. What about health insurance? How do I pay
absolutely.
my recurring bills with irregular income? What
Right.
does that look like for you?
Yeah, and I mean, I know this is not a podcast that's like a religious thing, but I really live by faith and I try to listen to myself. And it was just time. It was time for me to let go and really just continue to pour into the bucket that really fueled my soul and also bet on myself. But at the same time, too, I'm a person of the word and I said I would do it. So I wanted to keep that word. And so those are things that are important to me and I took under consideration with this change. But yes, you are right. So my husband has a job. It's still not easy to leave a multiple six-figure job, right?
Yep.
That's still multiple six figures I'm leaving behind.
Very good.
Huge pay cut, pretty big.
Yeah.
That was something that I talked to him and I told him how I felt. He also went through the journey with me of having a bad boss and being in situations that were difficult that I felt like I had to fight back because I am a woman, an immigrant, and I am a woman of color. And so there are things that I felt that I needed to represent by staying at corporate for as long as I did when things got really hard. He saw all of that and he was supportive. My husband's very supportive and he likes the idea of providing. So for him, he was like, yeah, we've made it work before when I passed on the job, the Silicon Valley job.
Mhm.
We had our first child and it was just on him. I think he made $13 an hour at that time.
Wow.
We were still able to figure it out how to save money, invest money, and travel because those things are important to me and important to him. Why couldn't we figure this out now? So I think that's a big, obviously, now we have mortgages and we definitely have expenses, but we house hack. So that pays for the mortgage and it pays for other, for utilities. And I think that just thinking about everything and planning. And I always have the option of going back. So we definitely have income saved. We're going to try to make it work with his. And I do have passive income through investing in loans,
Okay.
through investing in real estate, my own real estate. So we're definitely going to try to make it work with just money management and spending on the things that we know we can spend and not spending on things that we shouldn't spend. I think I'm very ruthless with cutting expenses I don't are not important to me, like shopping. I don't care to go shopping, honestly, if I don't have to. But then I care about travel. I just back from a almost 2 month trip in Europe. And so I think it's all about, I know budget is a bad word now. It's all about being intentional, I think.
Yep.
But I'm just very intentional with everything I do, still investing, still saving, and still saving for the things that matter to us. And so managing to, it's not going to be as comfortable and I'm not going to be able to invest as much as I was investing. I was investing a lot of money every month. Now I'm not going to be able to invest that much money. But it's just about moving forward. And then we do have a reserve of money that is invested that it keeps being reinvested, whether it's in real estate or on the market.
Okay.
It's just going to continue to be reinvested. We have to figure it out. Now, if he wants to leave his job, as far as health insurance goes, we have that through his job. We could have had some of it through Cobra, through my job as well for some time. We're using his health insurance. But if he decides to leave, if that's something he wants to do, we do have money saved in case he wants to leave. And then we have to live off of that. I used to work in this world of health insurance. So I know a person or two that could
Yeah.
probably help me figure it out what's the best plan if both of us are unemployed. That's how we are doing it for right now. We have that money. It's not being touched. because we are using his income mainly. And off of his income, we're still investing and saving, but then we're being ruthless at cutting certain expenses like shopping. The kids are still going to a school that is private. So I might look into different grants to see about that. Being a business owner, there's a lot of great advantages. I mean, shoot, you did it with Troy working and being able to write a lot of the active income
Mhm.
pause is a big thing that I'm looking forward to as well. So that's how I'm doing it, being ruthless with cutting expenses that I don't care for. And instead of eating out 3 days a week, we might eat out once a week. Investing still less, way less. Number four, saving some money for certain things like for vacation and continue to invest in real estate and just be useless about cutting some expenses that are not necessary and using some tax advantages too. We'll
Yeah.
get into the tax advantages because now we have way more. So that's how we're doing it.
Diagnosis. And it causes, how can I say this? Or to be on a very strict diet. And so
Players.
that diet, they basically put me on it when I was 20. And over the last 27, 28 years, sorry, of of playing around with it and seeing what I could get away with and what I couldn't get away with. You learn really fast, like what your high value things that you want to spend your calories on, or you want to
Mhm.
spend your carbs on, or you want to spend your whatever on. And these are the things that become non-negotiable. Like you mentioned,
Right.
you need to make sure you get back to Brazil to visit your family every once in a while. You need to make sure that you're
Mhm.
able to still travel, do the things that are important for you. But then you also learn what you can give up. And I noticed that when people have a high income, they talk about lifestyle creep. What normally ends up happening is the creep is in stuff they don't care about.
Yeah.
'Cause they
Makes sense.
lose their intentionality, because when you got money flowing everywhere, you can
Mhm.
just buy whatever you want, it's just little green pieces of paper.
Mhm.
Suddenly stop thinking critically or stop thinking intentionally about what you're doing. And that's how I was with my eating before I got this diagnosis and got put on this restrictive diet. And I really had to think hard about what is going in my milk. What do I really want to cheat on?
Mhm.
Right? And what is it like? That doesn't really tempt me. It would be good, but I could do without it. Budgeting is the same thing. And sometimes these difficulties that we have with our health or our diagnoses helps us to then apply that to something else in our lives, like our budget or finance.
I love that you're using that analogy because that's exactly what I say. It's like doing a diet that's super strict. How long can you sustain that? And that's the same thing with finances. Some people say, don't buy the coffee or don't buy dinner or don't buy the clothes. If you want to have a very expensive designer bag because that's very important to you, save that money, put that money away. How much of your paycheck can you put away? As long as you're paying yourself first, as long as you are investing first, why can't you do it? I believe in the flexible diet approach where you have some of what you want and you're very cutthroat with what doesn't mean anything to you. Like, I don't care. If I could, I would not drive. I wouldn't have a car. I would probably have a fancy car just if I had a bunch of money flowing around because I think they're
Yeah.
about me. But it's not like something that's super important to me. So I don't care to change a car every year. You
Yeah.
know, if that's one thing that's super important, then money should go there. If the Starbucks every day is important, then your money should go there. But then are you investing first? And then the other thing too for me, Emma, is if we get to a point where things are getting tighter, I would explore certain things like maybe trying to pick up another investment opportunity or maybe a side job hustle. The thing with side hustles is that it's a job. You're trading your time for money. And the reason why I left my job was to have freedom with my time and to choose and be very intentional about where I put pretty much like a diet, pretty much like finances, like where do I want my time to go to? But it's always an option. And going back to work is always an option too. You know, so those are the things I try to remind myself and be at peace with. Ask me again in 6 months because it may change. But I'm wanting to just really focus on the things that fuel my soul, like working in a fund and doing some personal finance projects, especially for moms. about children. I have a book I'm writing for kids because I've been talking about finances with my kids since they could speak, when they understand where their money goes first. It goes first to investments and then
Mhm.
your bills. And then, and if you can't pay your bills, then go figure out a way to increase your money. So
Yeah.
the type of project I want to be putting my time in. And, but yeah, finances, it's pretty much like a diet. Like you just have to pick what's worth it and what's not. Just be intentional.
Yes, I think that's like the theme of the show, where how to make life work with intentionality. Because I always think that if you want to invest more money, you just need to make more money. There are a lot of people out there who make a lot of money and they just fritter it away on stuff that's not important. So even if we make a lot of money, we still have to be very intentional because we want to be able to invest a lot because that's how you get your time back. But I remember one time I was talking to somebody who had a very low paying job and they just lived very simply and just invested for a long time, kind of the Dave Ramsey method where he turns 45 and and I'm going to retire. I'm like, wait, didn't you work like at Sonic or like a restaurant manager? I just was smart with money. So you don't always have to make a lot of money. It really depends on the lifestyle that's most important to you. Like I could live in a basement apartment or an RV or in a live in flip and be perfectly happy. A lot of people can't. And that's not something they wanna sacrifice and do. But for me, it doesn't really feel like a like,
That's what
it's
I'm saying. That's what
yeah.
I'm saying. It's like if you don't like, or even your home, like if you rent your basement and then it's paying for your mortgage, what other expenses do you have? Your bills and so it's if you can reduce some of your expenses creatively,
Yeah.
is you're creating income out of some of the things that you have, right? Assets. But also, if you walk, that's why I like Europe and other countries because you can just walk everywhere. You can take the subway, food is cheaper. So if you have a certain amount of money that you spend, if it's like little, you can retire early. So that number looks different to everybody.
Yeah. Yes. And that kinda brings us up to what we were talking about before. There are a couple wait, I think we were talking about building the future and the dream and what would you do if you didn't have to work for money and the books you wanna write and the causes you wanna get involved in and helping moms and women get a handle on personal finances. Because at a certain point, like, some people are living paycheck to paycheck,
Yes.
and getting that under control so you could be a manager of a Sonic and retire when you're 45, right? Those kinds of lessons. But at the same time, talking about cutting your expenses and using moving abroad or retiring abroad is a way to cut those expenses in a way that, doesn't feel like a deprivation.
On things.
It's really important, and as far as moving abroad goes, I just went with my husband to try to convince him to move into an RV or move abroad for 20 years.
You did one.
Yeah, we basically had some friends who lived in their RV full time, but they also owned a farm. So they lived in their RV on a farm. And I'm like, that's the best of both worlds. Because when they got tired of it, they would drive away and rent the farm out to other RVers who were like, I would like to have goats for a year. And I felt like we really can have it all if we just are intentional
Mhm.
about it. Everything that he wants, everything that I want, where we're just doing it in cycles and phases. And I felt like, what is it going to take? What do you need to let me do this thing that is really important to me? And he's
Mhm.
like, "Figure out a way to pay for it." I was like, "Done, dude. It's on." So
Easy.
he had to be able to quit his job because he did not want to have to work from the road, fighting internet, always being halfway here, halfway there, not having a settled place that he could just focus in and go to work. So he didn't want to be a remote worker from the road, at least not full time, right? And he also didn't want to have to be in a foreign country with weird time zone, unpredictable internet. He's like, I do not want to work from the road. So if you can figure out a way to pay for it where I don't have to be working, great. And it wasn't because he wanted to be lazy. He's a busy guy,
Right.
right? But he just needed to know that the financial part of it was taken care of so that he didn't have to have the stress of trying to be a remote worker. And that's really what turned the needle. And I said, look, we'll just go for a year or 3 months. Let's go do a 90-day tourist visa in Mexico or Portugal or something like that, and see how we like it. And if we like it, we can always go back and get a 12-month visa. And coming home to get those visas was an opportunity for us to see his family, my family, our adult kids, things like that, people who weren't coming with us. So we got to come home anyway, get the visa. So let's make a tour, see everybody, and then we can head back. He's not the kind of guy who needs to be hanging out fishing with his brothers every weekend either.
Right.
So he could be away for a year or 2 years and not big of a deal. So that's basically what we did. And it just boiled down to the financial diet. What's really important to you? And with both of us being retired, it changes the dynamic dramatically. It was another big old pay cut, right? And another level of intentionality to figure out like, how are we going to make this work?
Right.
But I've noticed living in Portugal and living in Mexico, it's not any cheaper than like Dallas. It's really not. It's cheaper in San Francisco and New York for sure, but it's not cheaper in Florida. So I was like, oh, do we really need to move abroad to save all this money? Because
Yeah.
living in Kansas is the same as Portugal. So it became a lot
Is
less
it?
bad. Yeah,
Is it?
I think without health insurance and some of the other things that you get and not having to maintain a car, but if you add it all up, like rent, food, all that, like in a smaller, even Dallas or a suburb of Dallas, it's really not that much different. It's not going to say it's not 50% off.
I think that like living, like the rent, that's like the biggest thing. Cause you could, I mean, my friend lives on a 2 bedroom, one bath.
Mhm.
I think they pay €600 a month and it's included with utility included.
Yeah, we were looking at 3 bedrooms and they were 1,000 to €2,000 a month in Portugal. It was a little cheaper in Spain, actually, across the
Yes.
border.
I
Mhm.
actually really liked Spain when I was there this last time. It does bother me, the poop on the flipping ground, but then Portugal has the same problem. I don't know how you felt, but that was bothersome. But I really liked Madrid and it was not bad at all. The food was somewhat similar.
Brazilian food is way better than Portuguese and Spanish food, I'll just tell you that right now.
I didn't say it, you said it.
There's a lot of Brazilian food in Portugal, a lot of Japanese food too, because there's a huge Japanese diaspora in Brazil, and so they learn Portuguese and they end up in Portugal. So we really did enjoy the Brazilian food and the Japanese food.
Portuguese pastries, yes. Food,
Yeah, but
no.
I can't eat pastry, so I can't eat the bread. So I'm like, or the sugar, right? So I'm like, and there wasn't anyway. We could go on for hours about that, but I think that's important because I was going to go to Portugal on a 90-day visa and see how we liked it. But instead, I just went for 2 weeks. You and I met up there for a conference, basically to meet new investors.
Mhm.
And it was so great to get to hang out with you, like in a foreign country. It was like this weird twilight zone of,
Went
oh, look,
on.
I'm here.
Well, I know that was a nice time. I wish it was longer, but it was a great time.
It is, but I'm glad I went for 2 weeks instead of 3 months and drag my whole family with me because I learned maybe Spain, right? So basically, what we're doing is the two eclipses in Spain in 2026 and 2027. We're going back for a year.
Love
So
it.
Rise Capital will be done with Fund 1 at that point, and we'll have more of our systems in place and might be able to be a little remote by then, right? With the weird time zones we're in
Probably be
here.
remote now, though.
I don't really want to. And so I think this is an interesting conversation that we are talking about before we hit record about the business of raising capital.
Mhm.
Because a misunderstanding is that a capital raiser comes in, smiles at you, puts your money in with somebody else, and then ditches you. And I think that's what active syndicators are sending because that's their differentiation. Like, I only raise money for my own deals and I manage my own deals. So when you put your money with me, it's only with me. But that's almost like shooting us in the foot in a
Yeah.
certain sense because we raise capital full time and we really niche down and find the best operators. We're giving people more options of places to invest because we have not just one, we have 10. Right. And also we're raising money for their deals. We're raising money for dedicated operators deals. So it's not a great look to be like, this capital raiser is going to smile at you and disappear. Our role is to find the best operators and places to put that money and give our investors more options. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like how this is running? It's a full-time job.
It's
Raising rules.
absolutely because it's a
Studies.
lot of especially I think with our group of partners, everyone is very aware and worried. The first goal is to protect people's capital.
Yeah.
Like not my capital. People's cap. I think everyone is on the same boat. And I think that's why we partner because everyone is on the same boat.
Yeah.
So that is a big responsibility we all take very serious. And I know there are people out there that do the smile and disappear, but that's definitely not our style. I think that our style is really to create a relationship and to see the investments go through. If it's not a good fit, we're happy to refer people to a different. If we're, let's say, we're going, I meet with an investor who is 100% interested in doing a specific asset class that we don't do. So let's say they just want to acquire self storage. That's not something that, we necessarily do for equity, right? We're not going to go into a self storage development. That's not something we're going to be looking at. So I'm happy to refer people, right, to what they really want to do. But I think it's more so of a feeling of accomplishment when we can have a relationship and we can see the deals come through. It's super interesting to me and exciting every time when after we're having these deals come through fruition and
Mhm.
seeing that when they return to myself is really exciting. But I'm super excited when I see it coming back to my investors and then they can pick other investments that they can put their money in.
Mhm.
So I think it's super important to partner with people that, and that's why Rise is such a cool concept because our job is to make sure we are being super careful with vetting the operators. We are seasoned enough that we know what questions need to be answered in order for us to put our money into that deal and just really vetting not just the deal, but the sponsor, the deal, the documents, how people get paid. And so I think that brings the investor a sense of peace. Me as an investor, I look for. I've heard horror stories on syndicators and people that take money and run away. And having a layer of security as an insurance is a big deal. Me speaking as an investor. So having Rise as a layer of protection where deals are being vetted and there's a communication. We're all very open to connect with our investors anytime they need. I think it's super important. I think that differentiates and definitely like capital raises that just smile and disappear. That's definitely not the way to do it. So as a first time investor, I would definitely stay away from that and
Mhm.
potentially look into partnering with a company that would be paying attention on all the due diligence pieces and the sponsor the deal, the doc,
Mhm.
and it's present to see the deal come to fruition.
Yeah, and I know on the debt deals, one thing I like about we service all our own debt deals in-house, and
Yeah,
so that is not a layer removed, like, that's our bread and butter, we keep short-term money moving, and then when we find an equity deal, it's like our specialty there, and that's why we have so many people on the team. It's like finding people who really are good at what they do, and they're paying attention to it. That allows me to focus more on serving investors because I don't have to worry about the
absolutely.
frowniest parts, yeah. So it allows us to really niche down,
Yeah,
like, we're full-time capital raisers, and I don't think people first getting into this realize, like, how much work there is because there's that misnomer out there that's like, "Your deal's good enough. Do you think you could find the money?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." The money is, in my opinion, way harder to find than the deal until you start getting into 50, 100, $500 million in larger organizations of funds, they struggle to place all that capital. But at the level that we're at, we have deals coming out our ears, right? We have way more deals than we have capital. So we really decided to niche down and focus on raising capital because that is the more difficult part of the puzzle at this point, honestly. Like I think it's harder than managing a property. It's harder than finding a property. It's harder than just about anything that you can do in this industry. And when I was finding properties, managing properties, doing all of that, I still had to raise money for my own projects. And it took my time and attention away from focusing on executing a really great project. That was when I was like, I shouldn't be running projects anymore because I'm spending so much time raising capital. I really should let the experts run the project and let me focus on raising capital. And you're in the same boat now after you've done a few projects yourself.
yeah, and that's the reason why I said it was a full-time job on its own, right? Operating is a full-time job. So I think that having those two separated is a big advantage because then everyone can focus on what they're good at. And we focus on analyzing the deal, analyzing the documents, analyzing how everything should be essentially, and making sure that the sponsors are operating and
Mhm.
doing what they need to do best, which is be on the property and look over the property and make sure that it matches the projection. So, yeah, I like that model better. And especially with my roots, where I come from, I was in corporate America. Then I bought a bunch of rental properties that I was operating and had other things going on. If I only had my rental properties, most likely I would have just kept my rental properties and would have improved the process so I could be managing them a little bit more stress free. But because I didn't have the time, because I was also doing these other things, it was difficult to focus on being the best operator. So I
Mhm.
think it's nice when the operator is just the operator and when there's a team to just be vetting and doing due diligence. And most people don't like the financials. You want someone do that for you. It's important.
Yeah, that alarm that just went off is our Rise Capital meeting.
Yes.
So we got to meet our partners and get some work done. So it was super fun to talk, they dive a little even
Sorry.
deeper into your story and hearing more details than I've heard in our previous conversation. And also just going through the thought process of why we left our jobs, left corporate, why we're full time real estate investors, but also why we're full time capital raisers. Cause I don't know if I've ever heard anybody really discuss their position as a full time capital raiser. Most people are trying to make it look like, oh, yeah, I'm in the ops and I'm at all the meetings and I'm there to protect your money. And I feel like my role of protecting the money is putting in the best businesses that we can find who are capable of protecting your money. And then we will be the liaison and
Yeah.
negotiate, frankly, a better deal because the best businesses are often not giving great deals to their investors because they're so good, right? That they attract more capital. And so we can go in and negotiate on our investors' behalf and say, hey, we're bringing in a larger pool. What can you do for us? And that's really our role. But then in the short term, keeping our deals in house, like that's our decision making process and why we decided to do what we do. And I don't think I've ever really talked about that
Yeah.
on the
I
show.
didn't think so. We should talk more about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because is there an operator who can really 100% focus on ops because they don't have to raise capital? Like, really, there are very few. This capital
I
I
don't
could,
know one.
yeah.
I know one, but they're at like institutional level.
I know a few who have integrated property management and they're in a larger company so that they can really focus on raising capital, but they have a large and qualified team behind them. But just like smaller operators, they spend a lot of their time raising capital and it detracts from for sure. Anyway, I mean, we do mostly debt. That's bread and butter. 80% of what we do is debt. But those little bits, when we find a great equity deal, we find a great team who really knows what they're doing. And I'm like, I could learn a thing or two about ops from this guy. Those are the people that I like to invest with.
Yeah, so using our network to support our investors, I think that's the better use of our time.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where we're at. Like, that's how this business runs, is the network. Our ability to dial in that and and sales really has reinforced that for you, is that being able to dial into your network
yeah,
is a powerful thing, and most people don't have a great network. It almost seems like the easy soft skill, but most people can't do it, and so I feel like that's valuable, and I really wanted to spend my time leveraging that ability in myself and also in the team, because that's how everything gets done is networking and relationships.
absolutely. 100%.
Well, I usually say, how can people reach out to you? But I got the link right here, partnerwithrice.com. Jump over there, schedule a phone call. You'll get me, Lais, or one of our partners
Yeah.
and talk about if what we do is a good fit for what you're looking to invest in passively. And if it's not a good fit, we can introduce you to somebody that can get you on the right path. Lais, describe the kind of person that you would love to talk to after the show.
Yes, I would love to talk to you if you are happy in your corporate job or your job, any job, and you're wanting to get into investing, passively, preferably because we can help you. Or if you are in the cusp of retirement or if you are retired looking for true passive income, we can definitely help you. So connect with us. We're happy to connect with you. And like I said, I like to connect with people. I'm a connector. So always happy to connect. Go to Partner with Rise and schedule some time with us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lais. I can't wait to hear from the people who are listening to this. We're a little bit more conversation and banter than normal because we already know each other, but it's going to be interesting to talk to the people who reach out after this episode. A little bit more targeted and focused. Sometimes I don't even talk about what I do on the show because we're talking about what the guest does. So this fun. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'll
Until
talk to
next
you
very
very
soon. Can't wait to hear about your next passive income adventure. I'll catch
soon.
you on the next show.
Thank you.